I don't come to the issue of innovation and entrepreneurship from a textbook. I don't come to the issue from the perspective of I'm in the private sector, I want to do something more meaningful with the dollars that are generated in the for-profit sector, and I want to find them to get someplace else. I come from a position of I have to save people's lives and my own as well. And whatever I can find that works is something that I want to do. And I don't want to get stuck in an ideological government battle about whether government's too big or too small, or whether or not the faith-based community should do it or the not-for-profit community. I don't really care. I want to find whoever it is that's interested in fixing a problem, putting them in a room together, letting them figure it out, and then giving them the space to fix that problem. Now, what I find interesting is that viewpoint interjects itself in the public psyche at a time when America seems to be completely calcified ideologically, manifested how Congress acts with each other, about how Democrats and Republicans can't talk to each other about solving a problem. And on the ground in New Orleans, we don't have time to worry about political party. We don't have time to worry about ideology. We don't have time to do anything other than to fix what is broken as quickly as we possibly can and do it in a way that's sustainable and scalable. So, huge responsibility, right? Because you have a city that's in desperate need, but a great opportunity, because there is no other place in America today, and one that I've really ever known about, that has to rebuild the fabric. I want you to think about that word fabric of its community. Most places have a catastrophe that's isolated. There's a building that gets burned down. There's a neighborhood that gets hurt. The infrastructure, though, to really build it back up continues to exist. What happened in New Orleans was so catastrophically deep that people lost everything that they had. They lost their house, right? They lost their job. They lost their doctor. They lost the way they got to and from work. And so right now in New Orleans, what we have to do is kind of reweave in a very intricate way the very fabric of everybody's lives. And that's much, much more complicated. And we would be in an awful situation if we built it back like it was before. That's not what I'm going to do in New Orleans. So we're not into rebuilding anymore. What we're going to do is recreate. We're going to quit thinking about how we put New Orleans back like it was and start dreaming about the major American city that we want it to be. That's what we're going to do for the next 4 or 8 years. And I will say to you that there is no other laboratory for democracy that exists in the country other than in the city of New Orleans, where right now we're rebuilding housing, we're rebuilding healthcare, we're rebuilding infrastructure, we're rebuilding schools, and we have the chance to build it back in a way that I think will be a model for the rest of the country. So here's the irony, right? Great things come from the most unusual places. And nobody in America 5 years ago would say to you that New Orleans is going to be on the leading and cutting edge of any issue. But in the next 8 years, we're going to be on the leading edge of every one of them. Because not only do we have the absolute need and the desire, but we have the space to actually make it happen. And your interest and your involvement is absolutely necessary, or it won't get done. Because here's the other thing that I learned as a good Democrat. That government not only can't do everything, but shouldn't do everything. Now, it should do better at doing the things it's supposed to do, and it needs to do better getting out of the way of the things that it shouldn't do. And finally, it has to create a space so that that incredible energy that I saw on the ground from both of those individuals that I told you about has space to grow and doesn't get pushed back down, which gets me into the business of entrepreneurship. Because after I saw those two things, as a lieutenant governor, I'm also in charge of volunteerism, and I am in charge of making sure that, and I didn't know this before, but organizations like City Year, which is one of the great entrepreneurial organizations, actually moves on. We created a City Year program in Louisiana after Katrina in 6 months. It usually takes 2 years to do. And now we have 2 City Year corps in the city of New Orleans working. We have more Teach for America individuals in New Orleans than anywhere else in the country. And so when I realized that these two guys had innovated and done what they did, I started asking myself, well, if they're doing that, how do I institutionalize that and create a space where I can tell people about what I saw on the street? Because I saw something fantastic. So how do you take that action and actually wrap a package around it and call it something. What is that? So I started looking around, and some people call that entrepreneurship. I said, that's really interesting. I don't know how to spell entrepreneurship. Is that really what that is? Yeah, that's what that is, because they innovated, they created, they scaled, they sustained. And those are all fancy words. But when I went back on the street, like on Aretha Castle Haley Boulevard, which is a burnt-out African-American neighborhood, and I saw Craig Cuccia, who was a construction guy but wanted to do something better in his life later on and decided he wanted to teach kids a trade, right? And so he taught them how to renovate an old building. And after they finished renovating the building, he said, well, what am I going to do with these kids now? I want to keep them off the street. What can they do? Well, New Orleans has food. He goes, so I'll teach them how to wait tables. And he opens this little restaurant. They started waiting tables. He goes, well, I don't want them just to be waiters. He said, maybe I can teach them how to run a restaurant. Maybe I can teach them how to cook. And so before you know it, Craig Cuccia, a guy driven by faith again, all of a sudden has this building that he's renovated. He's taught these kids, think workforce development, right? How to renovate the building. Then he's taught them how to wait tables. Then he's taught them how to cook. Now he's teaching them how to run a restaurant. And I said, Craig, did you know you're an entrepreneur? He said, I don't know what that means. I don't really know what that is. He goes, but I need help. Can you help me? Can you help me continue to do the incredible thing that I just continued to do? And I'm hearing entrepreneurship, and I'm seeing Craig Cuccia, and I'm talking, and I'm thinking people on the ground don't even know what you're calling them, but they're folks out here who want to help, right? Who work in big offices and have access to a lot of money, who want to do really good things with their life and want to take this kind of capital and find a way to support people who are solving old problems in a new way and want to measure them. Right, Andrew? And so that's how I got into the issue of social entrepreneurship. So I created an office in the Lieutenant Governor's office and said, how can I, as a Lieutenant Governor, not tell people what to do, but facilitate, bring people together, link them up? Craig, I want you to meet Joey. Joey's got money. You got the idea. You both have an interest in helping people. You're in a different place in your life, but if you meet each other, maybe y'all can leverage your assets, and maybe you can change a kid's life. So this is how the change of the life works. Cafe Reconcile is the name of that restaurant. Kids from that neighborhood now, instead of hurting each other on the street, are learning how to own and run restaurants. Melody Barnes, who's the president's domestic policy advisor, and Sonal Shah, came there with me because the president's trying to figure out how to create his Office of Social Entrepreneurship, and he heard of Cafe Reconcile. And they met a young guy named Michael Smith. Michael, what are you doing here? Man, I was in trouble. Got hurt through the juvenile justice system. I got a break. Mr. Craig brought me over here because I'm one of 9 children. I'm the oldest. And my brothers and sisters are so proud of me that I'm finally working. And Michael learned how to wait tables. And he waited on Sono Shah. And he waited on all of the president's people. And we said, Michael, are you going to stay? He goes, yeah, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to learn how to cook. And I'm not going to go to jail. It's basically what he was saying, right? So now, a couple years later, the other day, I was eating a good meal at a fancy restaurant, and somebody taps me on the shoulder. He says, Mr. Mitch. I said, yeah, he goes, I'm Michael. Do you remember me? I said, hey, Michael, what are you doing? He says, I'm the chef at this restaurant. I'm the chef at this restaurant. Now, here's Michael, and this goes to education. Michael probably went to a really bad school. He probably didn't learn how to read at the right level. He got stuck. He got himself in trouble. He was a kid that if he didn't get caught back was going to go to Angola and cost everybody about $50,000 a year and maybe took somebody else's life. But because Craig Cuccia decided that he wanted to fix a problem, right, he saved this kid's life. Now, that's all you need to know, in my opinion, about social entrepreneurship. And so the question for me is, how do I help make more Craig Cuccias, right? And less bureaucratic organizations that don't save people like Mike. How do we reorganize the way government, the not-for-profit sector, right, social entrepreneurship meld together so that more Michaels succeed?